Guys, I'm pretty sure this is live already. So let's see. It hasn't been too long since I made a video, but wasn't able to make one yesterday. Wanted to, but it didn't happen. So let me get right to the point of the title of this video: sell books on FBA or overpriced in antique malls. So the reason that I am talking about antique malls is because, well, ideally both, right? Is because I visited one randomly. I didn't even know I was going to go to one this weekend on Saturday in a big city. I mean, I live in Southern California, so most of the cities are big, but this is a big one, and it's more or less well-to-do. It's not like Beverly Hills or anything, but it has an antique mall, and I've been in there years and years ago, way before I started doing Amazon or FBA or eBay or anything like that. I went into this antique mall years and years ago and didn't understand about how they worked and whatnot. I have a better idea now that everybody has their section, their stall, and they have a seller number, and they put that on their price tags so that when someone goes up to buy it, the person who's ringing them up knows who to give the money to, who's owed the money, and the antique mall keeps a cut. This is a place where, or these are places where most of the time it's older items, so it could be, there's lots of furniture, there's lots of paintings, there's lots of random stuff like that, tchotchkes and whatnot, but a lot of them do have some books and some records and that type of stuff, some paraphernalia. Sometimes a lot of movie studios or whatnot will go there to find stuff for their sets and whatnot. But anyway, so this one I was surprised that it had like several thousand books. In the front was where they mostly had the books, different sellers. But I started looking at them, and they were all different types of niches or genres or whatever. But the prices were insane. I'm talking like a book, and I looked up some of them on Amazon. A book, a hardcover that they priced for $35. $35 in the antique mall, and on Amazon it was going for like $15, $16 merchant fulfilled, but the rank was like 14, 15 million. And I understand it's a totally different selling environment in an antique mall versus on Amazon, because people are browsing and they're not necessarily looking for something in particular, but they come across it. And hold on one second, guys. And they they find it and they buy it, right? But the prices were just crazy. I mean, $35. I saw many books over $40, many up into the... Oh, hold on. Sorry, guys. That's what happens with live videos. But yeah, the prices were crazy. The prices were crazy. They were, all the way up to like $60, $70, even more. Okay, come on. And yeah, B. And yeah, so it was just, I couldn't believe that people were actually going to spend that kind of money. I know the city is, people have some money in the city and whatnot, but it was just kind of crazy. Terry says, I paid $21.80 for one at a consignment mall, the most I've ever paid for a book to resell, and it sold for $63.98 a few days ago. Yeah, I mean, if you can actually find some to resell on Amazon, but I mean, my guess is, considering how expensive these books were, that they're not really going for resellers. It's just, there was one table that had like a bunch of oversized books that had big picture books or whatever you want to call them, that I can see why They might be worth a little bit more money, but I mean, $70, $80 for these books is just crazy. But I know it's a different market. I know there's a few people on a couple of different Facebook groups who sell in antique malls. I know there's one guy in particular who has a couple of stalls and sells also in some conventions and whatnot. And but I don't believe he's charging that kind of money. I guess you have to know your market. But also the other thing that's crazy to me is that they wouldn't have so many books and most of them going for a lot of money if people weren't actually buying them, right? I mean, it wouldn't make sense. Why would they price them so high if people were not willing to pay that kind of money? One person had a whole bookshelf, maybe 2 bookshelves of Easton Press, which you might or might not be familiar with. They're kind of fancy binding. They have fancy bindings on books, usually leather and a lot of like classic titles and that sort of thing. Oh. And so those were going for a lot of money as well, and there was a ton of them. I've never seen so many together at once. But I mean, I guess, you know, I don't sell there, so I don't know their strategy, but I mean, why would they price them for so high? So I've thought about that, you know, doing an antique mall and whatnot, because I have access to a lot of books and, you know, CDs and whatnot. So it's definitely an option, but this place was packed with stuff, and there was definitely, clearly there's a market for books there because there were a lot of books. Most of the place was not books, but they had a couple of areas that, you know, one person's space, which was a big space, open space in the middle, had, I mean, they must have had a few thousand books there. So definitely, and the bookshelves, the shelves are packed. So people are, you know, they clearly are buying the books, or they just restocked, I don't know what, but just kind of crazy to me that people are willing to spend that kind of money on a book. I mean, I know, you know, the difference between a bookstore, even an antique mall, and shopping online. It's totally different. People are willing to potentially spend more money because, you know, it might be an impulse buy, or maybe it's a book they've been looking for and they haven't been able to find it. Maybe they want to support local businesses, you know, that type of thing. Maybe they're just in the spending mood, whatever it is. You know, when you're there in person versus being online, it can be, you know, it can be a little more powerful to buy something or support the business or whatever it may be. So it's a totally different way to sell books, and it just was, you know, it just was kind of crazy to me for how much money this stuff was going for. So yeah, that's been on my mind for a few days. So I wanted to make a little video about it, just kind of share that little experience, because I mean, if you have thought about selling books outside of you know, Amazon or eBay or whatever, and you want to do it in the real world, an antique mall is a good idea or a good starting place, I believe, especially if you want to get to actually owning like a bookstore, whether it's small, medium-sized, big, whatever it is. If you have access to a lot of books, either gaylords of books or whatever it may be, people are willing to spend more money in a store, whether it's an antique mall or whether it's an actual store, your own standalone store. You know, people are willing to spend a little bit more money. So it's definitely something to consider to start out at an antique mall, because usually they'll take a percentage. It's going to vary depending on where you live and whatnot and that type of thing. They'll take a percentage and they'll charge you a monthly rent for the space. And then, at least the ones that I spoke to, they, at the end of the month, they'll cut you a check for whatever you sold minus their fee. And that's basically how it works. I believe they collect the sales tax. And, you know, when I've spoken to some people about it, or that run the places, they said, well, you know, the people that sell more are the people that keep it stocked. They keep it looking good. They might change it a little bit. You know, they don't want to have empty shelves or an empty space. They want to bring new items in and highlight new items. So it's like, you know, it's getting used to how to sell retail basically. And if Amazon is getting obnoxious in terms of the high fees and the split shipments and dealing with long-term storage fees and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, if you want to have other ways to monetize books and you have access to a lot of books, then that's definitely a way to go. If you don't want to, you know, depending on where you live, renting out a large space to have a bookstore can be kind of pricey. So an antique mall is definitely a way to go. I think it's a great idea. But, you know, it definitely is something that would take time. Like, you have to find a good place, and then once you sign the deal, the one that I found that looks good is month to month, so you don't have to be there for a year, 6 months, or whatever. You can try it out for a few months, and then if it doesn't work out, or if you don't like it, then, you know, you can pull the plug and get out of there. But yeah, you know, you got to set up your space. Are you going to paint it? Are you going to decorate it? Do you already have bookshelves? You have to buy some bookshelves. Make it look decent. You don't want it to be too crammed with stuff, but yet you still want to have a good amount of things there for people to actually look through and buy. That's a good thing about books. Or if you were to do, well, vinyl's a little bigger, but still, you know, vinyl or whatever it is there's more space. You can fit more into the smaller space because the spaces tend to be a little bit small in the antique malls. So, but you know, you got to spend a little money, not too much. I mean, the one that I was thinking about was a little over $100 a month, 125, and which is pretty low, and it's month to month. And they take 18%, which depends on who you're talking to. That might be high, but they're open 7 days a week, and every time someone buys something, they deal with it, and then end of the month, they give you a check minus their fee, 18%, and minus their rent. So hopefully you're making more than your rent and you know, to cover your rent and making some profit. But it's probably just learning the ropes the same way it is for Amazon, FBA, eBay, etc. Just kind of learning how things work and how to make the most money out of the space that you have and that type of stuff. So, so yeah. Anyway, it's just an interesting topic to me. I mean, I would love in the future to have a bookstore. It's such a big endeavor, but I see so many people, and by so many, I mean like 10 or so that I've seen, but still a good amount of people through the Facebook groups, FBA Facebook groups, who have stores. You know, a few have very large stores, a few have very small stores, but whether you have a 1,000 square foot store, or whether you have a 10 or 20,000 square foot store, it's, you know, it's giving you that experience and that totally different side of the business, the retail side. And because these people are getting books for so cheap, you know, even if they're selling them for $2, $3, $4, $5, they're still making a great return off of books they're getting for probably a nickel or so. But you know, it's something that you definitely have to have a plan for. With FBA and with Amazon and with eBay, you don't need very much money to start. I would say with FBA, even now with the high fees, I would suggest having at least $500. 500, I would say, to 1,000, but I would say with $500 you could probably start it up. Buy a couple $100 worth of books, send some shipments in, start to make some sales, continue to buy more books, and as you make sales, take that money and buy more books, etc., and just build it up. And within maybe 3 or 6 months, you could have made a couple $1,000, hopefully, or even, you know, hundreds of dollars. And as long as you keep reinvesting it to buying more inventory and getting used to or figuring out what sells, you know, it won't cost that much. But you know, clearly to open up even a small, not necessarily an antique mall type of situation, that's pretty inexpensive, but even like a small bookstore, I mean, imagine, right? Even if you're running it yourself and you're not hiring any employees and you're getting some volunteers, you have to have all the shelving, you have to have all the signage, you have to do some sort of advertising, even if it's mostly through Facebook, which is relatively inexpensive, you know, doing paid advertising and whatnot. But you know, it's something that probably you don't want to just jump into unless you have a lot of money to invest into it and you're not pressed for having to make a bunch of profit immediately. So yeah, if you guys have, we're up to 8 viewers, which is awesome. If you guys have any comments, questions, please do so, because I will very shortly run out of things to talk about if you guys are not giving me some questions or comments. So yeah, I just covered, you know, what I talked about in the beginning of the video. If you're new, is the overpriced books I felt were overpriced, $35, $40 and up at an antique mall that I went to on the weekend. So yeah, you know, that there's different ways of monetizing books, but all the duds that you might be getting if you're buying, not even Gaylords, but even just buying books in bulk in your local area, looking on Craigslist and or going to library sales or whatever it is, thrift stores, then, you know, a lot of those books will not be, there won't be enough profit or really any profit in them to sell them online. But, you know, selling them in a antique mall, retail type of situation can make a lot of sense, because a lot of people buy books in those types of, or in stores that they won't necessarily buy online, or if they do, there's just not profit for the seller. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to monetize, but it depends on what you want to do, how much time you have, and really what you're interested in. I mean, if you have no interest in doing any type of store situation, whether it's something really small like an antique mall booth, or whether it's something big like an actual store, then of course don't even bother. Stick to selling online, which is, you know, why a lot of people do it, right? Because they want to have the freedom to ship their books off to Amazon and have Amazon deal with all that stuff. So yeah, like I said, guys, any comments or questions, please let me know. So yeah, I've been noticing on the Facebook groups, a few people have been commenting about some, I guess there's fees are going up a little bit for FBA. I think books over £1, the fees going up, I believe going up by like 50 cents or something like that. So it's not anywhere near the fee increase that we saw in early last year, which I guess was about this time. Yeah, it was a year ago now, and that fee increase was very, very large, and not necessarily out of nowhere, but it wasn't. It's not uncommon for Amazon to do that. But I guess there's going to be a little bit of an increase of books over 50 cents or over £1, way over £1. So that's another reason why I like doing CDs. And I understand if you're not able to do CDs, it sucks, but they weigh less than books. You know, a lot of books will weigh, well, hardcovers definitely will weigh over £1. There's a good amount of, you know, the smaller paperbacks that'll weigh under £1, but a lot of paperbacks will weigh over £1 as well, especially if they're a little bit longer, have more pages, or are just physically, you know, bigger. So that's just, if you're selling, it doesn't matter whether you're selling 100 books a month or whether you're selling 1,000 books or a couple thousand books a month, an extra 50 cents. Well, you know, if you have a lot of oversized books or books that are over 1,000 or over £1, it's going to add up, right? I mean, you know, whether it's an extra 50 cents out of your, or $50 out of your pocket, or a couple grand out of your pocket every month, it's just less profit basically. So either keep sending in the same books, or we have to make another adjustment for the books that are over £1. You know, prices are either going to go up on Amazon, and the consumer's going to pay for it, or it's going to push out third-party sellers for those types of books. Terry says, I don't fear the fees as much as I used to. People send in so much worthless junk into Amazon that hopefully this will reduce that some. Yeah. I mean, when I first started, I definitely was sending in, the majority of the books I was sending in, I should not have bothered with. And that was when the fees were a lot less, but I just still hadn't figured out which are the better books to send in. But yeah, definitely. I mean, people are sending in stuff that are not, they're not worth going and sitting in the warehouse. There's just not enough profit there. they don't sell that often. There's too much competition. Yeah, the price is too low. The merchant fulfilled price is too low, etc. Yeah, I mean, for sure. If you're keeping your ASP, your average sale price, high enough, and you're able to buy your books for keeping your cost of goods pretty low, then this little bit of extra fees is probably not that big of a deal to you. But if you're relying on sort of what are called the bread and butter books, which are the quicker sellers that have less profit. If you're making, let's say, $2, a bunch of books where you're making $2 off of them, profit after everything, after buying the book and shipping it in, and it's selling quickly, and then they take a 50 cents out of that. Well, then now you're down to $1.50. So, so yeah, I mean, it's just, again, it's about making choices, right, and decisions. Are you gonna stick to those types of bread and butter books that sell quickly, but you make a little less profit? Are you gonna try to find higher priced or higher profit books, which might be harder to find, but once you are able to find good sources for those, whether they're thrift stores, whether it's library sales or whatever it may be, whether it's even what people do is, you know, go onto Amazon and buy merchant fulfilled prices, and then once they get it shipped to them, turn it around and send it in for FBA. So, you know, flipping books online with eFlip or what the other softwares are. Terry says his ASP so far this year is $28.41. A lot higher than mine, that's for sure. That's what happens when I get into bulk, is my ASP goes down. But I do more volume, but yeah. So it just depends. I mean, that's a great ASP. I mean, $28. I've never gotten close to that. So you clearly have gotten good at finding good sources, for finding books that don't cost too much. And books that are of high profit, and there's not, I guess you're not having too much competition. I mean, you're not having to deal with other people, other resellers in your area. Sounds like, anyway. So yeah, so any guys have any comments, questions, concerns, let me know. Let's see, what else? I hit my limit on my eBay selling or monthly seller's limit, and so I bumped it up now, and my store is now where I can list up to 1,000 a month. I was at 250, so now I bumped it up to 1,000, and I am gonna, you know, be pushing to put a lot more on eBay, because I just have a lot of, between CDs and random software and video games and DVDs and whatnot, and putting lots together of CDs. I want to try to take advantage of it and see how much I can pull out of it. So anyway, as you can see, I'm kind of running out of things to say. It's been a bit of a long video for me anyway, 22 minutes. So if you guys don't have anything else or anything to comment on or any questions or anything, I'm probably gonna have to cut the video. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I should make a video tomorrow on a different topic, and hopefully it'll be interesting or entertaining or whatever. And as always, guys, remember, keep booking.